for camp is standing on the promises. And so I'm going to start with Monday morning and walk through each of the day's lessons. And I'll look at each lesson for just a minute or two and kind of give you an idea of what I was thinking as I wrote through this. And so it'll kind of give you an idea of where you may go with this as you're teaching it on each morning. Each day's lesson will be a separate video, so you don't have to sit down and watch all of it all over again if you don't get to finish. And hopefully I can hold each one to just about 5 to 7 minutes. And that way you have plenty of time to read through this or to watch through this as you're preparing for camp. On the first morning, we're looking at the promise of a home. One of the things that I want to get across is that when God promises something, it doesn't always necessarily come across, and it doesn't always work out the way we think it should work out or the way that we would like it to work out. And so I wrote Monday morning's lesson with that in mind, and it covers a lot of material. But one of the reasons I wrote it this way is so that you can learn as much about the kids in your session as they can about the Bible. So on this first day, what you get to do is walk through the story of the Old Testament, specifically from the call of Abram, who becomes Abraham, all the way to where Joshua actually leads the people into the promised land. Now, if you really want to continue going after that, we still haven't reached the promised land that I believe God was talking about in the Old Testament when he said that it would be better than even this. So what I'm having you do is to walk through the story of the Old Testament from Abraham to Isaac and Isaac to Jacob. And Jacob has many sons and then Joseph. And then there's this key verse in the Old Testament in Exodus 1 that says, "Then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came to power in Egypt. Look," he said to his people, "the Israelites are numerous, and they may overtake us." And so we always forget how the people of Israel got to Egypt, and we hardly ever think about how they got from being there with Joseph to being enslaved, to be the ones that were building the pyramids and things in Egypt. We skip this passage that says, "And there arose a king who did not know Joseph," and we jump right on into, hey, Moses is now going to lead them out of the promised land. I mean, out of the land into the promised land and out of slavery. And so I want us to spend some time with the Old Testament. And I think the better way to do this would be to ask questions of the students and let them lead from person to person. Hey, we all know the story of Abraham, and maybe you go over it just a little bit. What do y'all remember about the story of Abraham? And then from Abraham you can ask, hey, we just talked about Abraham's son Isaac. And if you'll remember, Abraham was asked by God to sacrifice his son Isaac. What do y'all know about that? And then you can lead that into, so what do you know about Isaac? Did Isaac have kids? Who were Isaac's kids? And you can walk through the Old Testament story asking questions of the students that you'll have in front of you on Monday morning. And I hope that gives us a sense of how much Bible knowledge some of the kids have. We all know that sometimes on their sheet of paper it says they go to this church or that church, but that may mean that they've only been there once or twice. And so hopefully by using this on Monday morning and talking about God delivering on his promise to put these people into the promised land, to let his Israelites live in the promised land, and he never gave up on that promise. It just took longer than we would ever want it to. Hopefully by going through this, you will be able to spend as much time getting to know what the kids know as they do relearning this story. But I didn't want to finish it with just that. I think on Monday morning would be a good day for you to open up some to your kids, to the students that you're teaching about your walk with Christ and how you have gotten from where you were to where you are to the point in life where you would give up a week and serve at a camp. And so I finished it with John 14, which says, "In my Father's house there are many, many rooms." And so I want the kids to know, the students to know up front that we're not just looking at this promised land in the Old Testament, but we're always thinking about, and we're always thinking towards this promised land that God is still preparing for us. And so that is Monday morning's lesson. That's why I wrote it the way I did. again, you'll probably want to spend a little time just flipping through Genesis and Exodus so that you have these stories fresh on your mind, so that you may even write out the questions you may ask beyond what I wrote that leads them from one event to the next event. And I hope that as you prepare for camp, you keep these things in mind. That God does not always answer His promises the way we would like Him to.